Chapter 2, Stability. The doctrines of truth are 9. He who knows these overstandingly possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open at Kemenu. The 9 Tehuti doctrines upon which the entire Tehuti teaching is based are as follows: the doctrine of mental, the doctrine of correspondence, the doctrine of vibration, the doctrine of polarity, the doctrine of rhythm, the doctrine of cause and effect, the doctrine of gender, the doctrine of growth, the doctrine of breathing. These 9 doctrines will be discussed and explained as I proceed with these studies. A short explanation of each, however, is in place to be given at this point in time in your coming journey. Number 1, the doctrine of mental. Mine your mind for the jewels of your soul. This doctrine embodies the right knowledge that, quote, all is mental and each has a mind. It explains that the all, which is the reality underlying all outward and inward manifestations and appearances, seen and unseen, which we know under the terms of existence, the material existence, the ethereal existence, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, ether, and, in short, all that is apparent to our material senses. One sense, subdivided into many, is Ka, spirit, Ba, soul, Kat, body, which in itself is knowable and definable, but which may be considered and thought of as a universal, infinite, living mind, in Pa Temta, the all, the threefold you. You have touched your Kat, felt it through your Ka, and accepted the way it felt through your Ba. Kat Kaba, see, hear, taste, smell, and feel, are all in Kat. Knowing this is in Ka, and being able to appreciate it is Ba. All these are but touch. All is I am. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation in the Pa Temta, the all, subject to the laws of created things if physical, and that the universe as a whole and its parts or units has its existence in the mind of the all, as does all, in which mind we live and move and have our being, persons, places, and things, I, you, they. This doctrine, by establishing the physical and ethereal mental nature of all things and their physical part in the universe, easily explains all of the varied mental and psychic phenomena that occupy such a large portion of the public attention, and which, without such explanation, you end up with blind faith, false hopes, and beliefs in spookisms, chasing a ghost, God, to an unknown and unproven place to receive gifts you are not worthy, no matter how good you pretend to be, just so you wouldn't get burnt in an eternal fire, hell. So you made a deal with your God, all which is non-understandable and defy scientific realities. An overstanding of this great Egyptian doctrine of mental in relation to mind. Each individual has a mind which is fed from the same mental reservoir, which enables each individual to readily grasp the laws of the mental and to apply the same to his or her well-being and advancement. That's being in touch with a real God. The ancient Egyptian order student is enabled to apply intelligently and out-intelligently the great mental and physical laws, instead of using them in a haphazard manner as religions have. With the Ankh, the master key, in his possession, the student may unlock many doors of the mental and psychic temple of right knowledge, right wisdom, and the right overstanding, and enter the same freely using the God mind you have, or the mind of mental, which is God. This explains the true nature of energy, power, matter, existence, and why and how all these are subordinate to the mastery of mind, and that each mind is a slave to mental, the force of ether which controls the action of matter. One of the old Tahuti masters wrote long ages ago, "He or she realizes that all is," and these words are as true for all time. Without this Ankh, master key, mastery is impossible, and the student knocks in vain at the many doors of the temple and is met by the false teacher of ghosts, spooks, fictions, beliefs, myths, given false hopes. No facts, no truth, just lie after lie. The light is the devil's tool. Darkness is the home of God. Peace, tranquility, and bliss. Find your way back to black. Peace. 2. Number 2, the doctrine of correspondence. That which is above is the same as that which is below, and both in Pa Temta, the all. This doctrine embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life between two things. The old axiom ran in these words: as above, so below; as below, so above. This will This will mislead you into thinking there are two directions, when in fact there is no direction at all. Even your own planet Earth is going nowhere, around and back again. So time is going nowhere. And the grasping of this doctrine gives one the means of solving many a blinding paradox and the many hidden secrets of nature at work in all things. They claim there are planes of existence beyond our knowledge, like heaven and hell, but they would serve no point if they believe YHWH, Theos or Allah, created all things for you. When we apply the doctrine of correspondence to them, we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. To correspond, this must take place between two or more things. This doctrine is of universal application and manifestation, seen, heard, tasted, smelled, and felt things. Even planes are things, the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe. It is a universal law under 1, persons; 2, places; 3, things. The ancient Egyptians considered this doctrine as one of the most important mental and physical instruments by which mortals were able to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view of the unknown, that which was lighter than the hydrogen atom, but now the once unknown is known as quarks and zells. Things have changed a great deal. Its use even tore aside the veil of spookism, ghostism, Holy Ghost, 6 ether spirit forces become real beings, their unseen or unfelt, unproven God, to the extent that a glimpse of the subatomic world, the very face of their creator, has been caught by the hand and now can be examined. So the term supreme being becomes real. A supreme being is still a being like human being. Supreme human being. Think about this point. That which was nothing is now many wonderful things. Beginning beyond the hydrogen atom is a new world of energies, just as a knowledge of the principles of geometry enables mortals to measure distant suns and their movements while seated in an observatory. So a knowledge of the doctrine of correspondence enables mortals to reason from the known to the unknown, made known, when in fact geometry should only be the measurement of geo, the earth, from nothing to thing, from hydrogen to ether, and on and on. The unreal has become real. Mental does in fact exist. Studying a thing reveals many things, all corresponding in Pa Temta, the all, as part of all. It did not stop at the hydrogen atom. It does not stop at your God, Yahweh, or Allah. They are, by your own words, in heaven, in which is being opened with the master key, all in all. Number 3, the doctrine of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This is the key to manifestation, but beyond things is all without movement. This doctrine embodies the truth that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest. Facts which modern scientific discovery tends to verify. And yet, this Egyptian doctrine was enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. This doctrine explains that the differences between the different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration, different from movement, from place to place, from the ethereal, which is pure spirit, pure soul, down to the grossest form of matter. All things are in vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the position on the scale. The lower the vibration, the more spiritual, as matter vibrates at a slower rate. The particles become farther and farther apart. The vibration of spirit is at such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it is practically at rest, just as a rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless because all things work in cycles, as the serpent with its tail and its own mouth. And at the other end of the scale, there are gross forms of matter whose vibrations are so low as to seem at rest. So, in fact, they are the same. Between these poles, there are millions upon millions of varying degrees of vibration, from corpuscle and electron, atom and molecule, to worlds and universes. Everything is in vibratory motion, yet nothing is actually moving from its place. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but varying degrees of vibration, and not so onto the spiritual planes. These states of existence are between the movement of that which vibrates as the space between the tick and the tock of time, or the rest in a music scale. An overstanding of this doctrine with the appropriate formulas enables the ancient Egyptian order students to control their vibrations as well as those of others, vibrating on lower bass texture tone of the past and travel back to when, or raise on the higher pitch of the future and travel up to when, which was then and becomes then from now. The masters also apply this doctrine to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He or she who overstands the doctrine of vibration has grasped the Sekhem, or scepter of power, master of time and space. Yet, in knowing this doctrine on vibrations, know also that all things vibrate, but what of the nothing that exists? They have their own principle, not rated by movement. Number 4, the doctrine of polarity. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. This doctrine embodies part truth that everything is dual. Nothing has dual. Existence has no dual, and don't say non-existence, because that would mean just that, non-existence. So there's no second part or dual. Everything has two poles. The all is the ground that their poles are planted. Everything has its pair of opposites. To create opposites is the trick of evil versus good, giving the devil or evil an equal place and part in things. No real opposition exists against all. Where would it come from? It would already be a part, all of which were old Egyptian axioms. It explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed so many, which have been stated as follows. Thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree. The pairs of opposites may be reconciled. Extremes meet. Everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half-truths. Every truth is a half-false. These are the teachings of the children of light. It's not true. There are two sides to everything. Wrong. not in quantum physics. All is all. It explains that in everything there are two poles, yet these poles stand on one base, or that opposite aspects, and that opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. Let me illustrate the true doctrine of Egypt. Hot and cold, although they are called opposites by the children of light, they are really the same thing, the differences consisting merely of degrees of the same thing. Look at your thermometer and see if you can discover where the heat terminates and the cold begins. There's no such thing as absolute heat or absolute coldness. The two terms hot and cold simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing, and that same thing, which manifests as hot and cold, is merely a form, a mood, a variety, and a rate of vibration. So hot and cold are simply the two poles of that which we call temperature, and the phenomena attendant thereupon are manifestations of the doctrine of polarity, the same doctrine that manifests in the case of light and darkness, which are not the same things, the difference consisting of varying degrees between the two poles of phenomena. Where darkness leaves off and light begins is not true, for darkness is eternal, all, and light is in darkness, and where there is light, there is shadow. Where there is pure darkness, there is no light. Darkness is all, never the other way. So they are not and never can be opposite or the same thing. Light has limitations. You can cut the light off, but never blackness or darkness. It always exists. What is the difference between large and small, hard and soft? Both, again, are things. What is the difference between black and white in terms of color, which both are classified, but which neither are colors? As light and darkness are not colors, colors primarily are red, blue, and yellow. Combinations or mixtures of these three colors produce the rainbow and on crystal, and is used for a prism and is transparent, meaning you can see through it. It's whatever material is made from that registers on the existence scale. Combining all the primary colors and all of the subcolors made from them together would give you dark brown, inclining to black, yet blackness is simple existence. Between sharp and dull, between noise and quiet, between high and low, between positive and negative, black or dark is all, and all things exist in all, including light or white. White has an end. The doctrine of polarity explains these paradoxes, and no other doctrine can supersede it. Yet darkness is outside of this principle or doctrine. It can't be compared. It is all. The same principle operates on the mental plane as the physical of cause, not physical of things. It's light, object, action, motion, or movement. Mental is the blackness mind, the light that shines in each body. Let us take a radical and extreme example, that of love and hate, two mental states apparently totally different, planted in emotion, and yet there are degrees of hate and degrees of love, and a middle point in which we use the terms like or dislike, which shade into each other so gradually that sometimes we are at a loss to know whether we like or dislike or neither. And all are simply degrees of the same thing, as you will see, if you will but think a moment. And more than this, and considered of more importance by the Egyptian, it is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love in one's own mind. That is one's own mind, not the whole of mental, and in the minds of others. Many of you who read these lines have had personal experiences of the involuntary rapid transition from love to hate, and the reverse in your own case and that of others. That's emotional. This is caused by events on the physical, not the mental, and you will therefore realize the possibility of this being accomplished by the use of will, by means of the Egyptian formulas. Good and evil are but the poles of the same thing placed in action, and the Egyptian understands the art of transmuting evil into good by means of an application of the doctrine of polarity. In short, the art of polarization becomes a phase of emotional alchemy, never mental. known and practiced by the ancient and modern Egyptian masters. An overstanding of this doctrine will enable one to change his or her own polarity as well as that of others, if he will devote the time and study necessary to master the art. Number 5, the doctrine of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. To swing to and fro, you need a point of origin and a fixed spot as to where the cord hangs from, and the first movement to start the swing. Yet all of this is in the all. This is a physical principle, a motive principle. This doctrine embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with the doctrine of polarity described a second ago. Not a moment, for that comes before the second and would not apply in this case where you have points of reference to and fro. To is actually from, and from is from or return from and come from. There is always an action and a reaction in this physical realm, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, mortals, animals, energy, and matter, but never mental or ethereal, which, as I said, just is. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, birth and death, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally in the physical states of mortals, like breathing in and out. And it is with this latter that the Egyptian finds the overstanding of the doctrine most important. The Egyptians have grasped this doctrine, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by the use of the appropriate formulas and methods. They apply the mental law of neutralization. They cannot annul the doctrine or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape its effects upon themselves to a certain degree, depending on the mastery of the doctrine. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. In this and similar methods consists the art of Egyptians. The master of the haka polarizes himself or herself at the point at which he or she wants to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him or her to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously, and by the use of his or her will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible on the part of the masses who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum. This doctrine and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Egyptians, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using from an important part of the ancient Egyptian order's mental alchemy. Number 6, the doctrine of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And law is, all things happen in the all. All is affected by things in the all. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect and effect for every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance or luck, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Egyptians understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers with effects happening within itself. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others, stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes, moving them about like fish on the hook of life. But the masters, rising to the place above, dominate their moods, character qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become the fishers of men instead of fish. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The master obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is a condensed wealth of Egyptian knowledge. I'm just going to reread that last sentence. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is a condensed wealth of Egyptian knowledge. And number 7, the doctrine of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Again, there is no real gender except what appears in the physical realm and in the spiritual realm. You are not male or female. You are God. This doctrine embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything physical and nothing spiritual. The masculine and feminine principles ever at work. The need to separate to establish authority. This is true only on the physical plane, but not the mental nor even the spiritual planes. No soul or spirit has need of gender, for they do not reproduce or copulate. On the physical plane, the doctrine manifests as sex. On the higher planes, it takes higher forms, but the doctrine is ever the same. No creation physical is possible without this doctrine. An overstanding of its laws will throw light on many a subject that has perplexed the minds of many. Yes, sex is of the light, as is what it breeds, lust, rape, caused by gender. The doctrine of gender works ever in the direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person contains the two elements or doctrines, or this great doctrine within it, him or her. Every male thing has the female element also. Every female contains also the male doctrine. If you would understand the doctrine of mental and creation, birth, growth, generation, and regeneration, you must understand and study this Egyptian doctrine. It contains the solution of many mysteries of life. We caution you that this doctrine has no reference to the many base, pernicious, and degrading lustful theories, teachings, and practices which are taught under the fancy titles, which are a prostitution of the great natural doctrine of gender. Such base revivals of the ancient infamous forms of phallicism tend to ruin flesh, body, and person, and the Egyptian has never sounded the warning note against these degraded teachings which tend toward lust and perversion of nature's doctrines. God, Theos, had a child, Jesus, by a woman, Mary. Allah is a he, but does not need a she. If you seek such teachings, you must go elsewhere for them. The ancient Egyptian order contains nothing for you along these lines. To the pure, all things are pure. To the base, all things are base. We must get in Pa Tekenu, the obelisk, as the symbol of gender control. How both how both male and female built them, and the passed down has the pillar in front of many temples, temple lodges, the minarets of mosques, all came from the doctrine of gender. Number 8, the doctrine of growth and creation. Growth is a manifestation of size, alternating from one point in time and space to another. Creation is a manifestation of beginning and on to a specific designated point, as found in the seed of the thought that initiates the idea of creation. All forms of growth, creation, are no more than a change in that which is apparent, in which either direction the onlooker perceives it. This doctrine must make you realize that all things that exist on the physical plane were created and or created themselves out of pre-existing matter or energy, and the root reality of creation is that the very word in itself merely means to grow. As habits grow, thoughts grow, knowledge grows, illness grows, bacteria grows, the mind grows. But through information channeled from an etheric cord from the mental, the reservoir of the intellect, and the source from which the mind is fed intellect, these are realities, substantial realities, material realities. The universe is a phenomenon of life that grew into existence. Nothing in existence can decreate or degrow or even decline from existing. They are here because they are supposed to be here by virtue of the fact that they exist and are here. So also the spirit that you call the power of God, responsible for creation, grew in the darkness. Thus, your God or God concept is also a part of creation and growth, and without that principle or doctrine, your God could not exist. Thus, your God is not merely the creator or a creator, but part of that which is and was created and grew. These are the master keys that unravel the mystery of existence, as all manifests as the all, thus creation and birth. Doctrine number 9, breathing. Everything appears to be breathing inward and outward. This appears to be the principle by which one acknowledges life, but in actuality, true life existed before the breath, or the necessity to breathe to exist. This doctrine teaches the breath of life. You don't merely breathe in and out. All the pores of your body breathe. Thoughts breathe. As mind changes from thought to idea to created thing, when the artist conceives a thought to be put on the easel, the finished product is the exhale, the manifestation of an inner thought or breath now into existence. Pulsation is breathing, but breathing is not the sole source of life, as monolithic religions would have you believe that something breathed the breath of life into you and you became a living soul, missing that the being, be it God by whichever name they chose, had to exhale, and to accumulate the breath to exhale must have inhaled previously, which puts supreme being under the law of inhaling to exhale. This principle of the Egyptian doctrine revealed the simple fact of origin being indefinable in terms of all, but definable in terms of all, but definable in terms of the all. By the point where all has to be defined as the something, thus existence had to be defined as the God to give a sense of the only God responsible for creation, when in fact, that only God who breathed out the breath of life into your nostrils in itself had to have been created, had an origin, and grew. And as one accepts this God and begins to surrender their inquisitiveness in exchange for faith and belief, they have ceased to breathe from all and merely breathe as a part of the all. That's the end of chapter 2. Congratulations on taking further steps to learn how to bless yourself. These are the teachings that will help you to do so. Bless yourself.